Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Brad Waldschmidt. I'm an engineer that works with the Nashville Department of Transportation on the Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program. We really appreciate you all joining us to talk about Blairfield Drive. Before we dive in, I'd like to have my colleague Lan introduce herself. Lan, can you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name's Lam Lee. I work with Brad and I'm going to help him out today during the presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll get to answering them throughout or after the presentation.
Excellent. Appreciate it, Lan. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to go through about a 12 or 15-minute presentation. We want to talk about the traffic calming program, how Blairfield Drive was selected, some of the options that we have to reduce vehicle speeds on a street like Blairfield Drive, and also present a concept design, which is not a final design, but it's just something to kind of provide just to get some initial feedback from those in the neighborhood. So that's sort of what we'd like to do. During the presentation, if you have some comments or if you have questions, we'd like to ask you to, I guess, ask or provide that comment in one of two ways. The first is if you'd be willing to wait until the end of the 12 or 15-minute presentation. We will have plenty of time for Q&A if you want to come off mute at the end. That's one option. The second option is if you want to just type a question or comment in the chat, Lan will be able to monitor those at the very end and kind of run through them that way. For most people, I think that there should be a chat feature in the bottom right corner of WebEx. So you can do it either way. We just kind of wanted to present that. So let's go ahead and dive into the presentation. Lan, I am going to ask if you can, I want to make sure that my screen is working. Can you see the title slide, Lan?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you for confirming. So what is traffic calming? The Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program focuses on residential streets, just like Blairfield Drive, and we're really looking to lower vehicle speeds along the street. We like to refer to 3 E's of traffic calming. The first E is education. This meeting is a great example of that meeting. We as the engineers can educate you on some engineering things that can be done to the street to reduce vehicle speeds. But you all live out here. You're the experts of your street and your neighborhood. So together, we make a really good team to try to focus on traffic calming. The second E is enforcement. Enforcing the posted speed limits are absolutely a part of traffic calming. But that is not a part that the Nashville Department of Transportation or NDOT really has much jurisdiction over. So while enforcement's important, NDOT doesn't have much to do with the enforcement, but NDOT does have a lot to do with the third E, which is the engineering, doing something from an engineering standpoint to the streets to encourage and reduce vehicle speeds. So one of the important reasons why Nashville does traffic calming is safety and this vision of having 0 deaths on our streets. If the really unfortunate accident happens where a pedestrian's hit by a vehicle and that vehicle's traveling at 25 miles per hour, that pedestrian has an 89% chance of survival. But if you look at the far right on this slide, if that same vehicle is going 45 miles per hour and hits a pedestrian, that pedestrian has that 35% chance of survival. Now, we don't want any pedestrians hit by any cars, but if that unfortunate thing happens, we really want to be reducing vehicle speeds closer to the 25 mile per hour speed to increase that chance of survival. That's kind of what the Vision Zero mentality is about, is really trying to save lives. So there have been many applications for the neighborhood traffic calming program. Over 500 streets in Metro Nashville have been applied for, citizens requesting traffic calming on their street. And back in summer, I believe it was August of last year, 85 streets were chosen, one of which was Blairfield Drive. Now, real quick, we are here to talk about traffic calming, but you may have some other questions or comments that are not traffic calming. We always like to make sure we highlight the Hub Nashville tool. You can either dial 311 or you can go to hub.nashville.gov. This can be if you think there need to be more stop signs on a street, or if there's something going on with the traffic signal that you don't think looks right, or if there's storm debris clogging a drain inlet or anything like that. Anything you think someone at the city needs to know about, Hub Nashville is a tool we just like to make sure neighbors know about. But if it's about traffic calming, you do not need to go to Hub Nashville. Lan and I, we've got you here tonight. We just like to make sure we feature this tool. So real quick, I mentioned 500 streets that applied for traffic calming, one of which have been Blairfield. Um, all the streets get analyzed and we collect data. We pick a day and go do a traffic count to collect the vehicles, the number of vehicles and the speeds. But, and so we look at things like speeds on the street. We look at whether there's sidewalks or not along the street. We also look at things like whether there's parks or schools. And then we look at things if there's been any really bad crashes like a pedestrian injury or even worse, a pedestrian fatality. We look at things like that on all the streets applications and combined 85 streets were chosen back in August. And again, Blairfield was in that 85. I can't remember exactly where, but you know, all the 85 that were chosen, Blairfield was one of them. And that's why we're here talking to you all today. So just to make sure that just to make sure we understand, we are talking about Blairfield Drive from the A.Z. Kelly Elementary School all the way over to Cane Ridge Road. We're going to try to make sure we're explaining exactly the limits because I know Blairfield continues on past the school to over to Pettis, but basically where the elementary school property line kind of stops and where your neighborhood kind of starts, that's basically where we're starting. And then we're going eastward over to Cane Ridge Road. And you can see here on the day that we did collect 85th percentile speed, that's not average, but 85th percentile, something us traffic engineers usually use when looking at speeds on a road. And your speeds were 35 miles per hour. Some would have been more, some would have been less, but the 85th percentile speed was 35 miles per hour. And you can see there the volume, almost 2,800 cars per day. And then your street width is around 37 feet of pavement, but that does vary, I know, along your Blairfield Drive section. Okay, so here's what I want to make sure we're very clear. That green line does go from Pettis to Cane Ridge. Visually, that's not correct, so I want to make sure we are not misleading anybody. You know, I'm not sure if my cursor shows up, but you know, if we start at Pettis, like this part of Blairfield is not part of the traffic calming program. As we go around through the schools, still not part of it. And then as we level back off, going eastward, still not. But right where the neighborhood starts, right where the A.Z. Kelly Elementary School property line hits the neighborhood, that is where on this green line the traffic calming project starts. And then we go all the way over to the east toward Cane Ridge Road. And so we'll have a concept design just to give you all an idea of what traffic calming could look like. And we'll kind of go through those limits again, because we know Blairfield goes all the way to Pettis, but we want to make sure we are starting at the school and then going eastward to Cane Ridge Road. And we can touch on that more later in the Q&A if needed. So we want to talk about toolkit. What are some traffic calming measures that NDOT uses in their toolkit? Well, one of the more common ones that NDOT implements are these speed cushions. There's, as you can see from the photos, they're black, they're modular rubber devices. At their highest height, they are 3 inches off the asphalt. And you'll see there's a bullet here that says reduced impact to emergency response vehicles. I want to go to the next slide and then come back, and I think that bullet will make a little more sense. So these speed cushions are one of the more common ones that NDOT implements. Now going to the next slide, there's also something called speed tables. And what you'll notice is they're very, very similar, but they extend across the entire width of the street. So these speed tables are very effective at reducing vehicle speeds, passenger vehicles, but also emergency vehicles. These speed tables are very effective at reducing even emergency vehicles like fire trucks or ambulances who may need to get to an emergency or an incident sometimes. And so because of that, I'm going to go back a slide now. That is one reason why NDOT typically prefers looking at the speed cushions, because there's these gaps between them and a little bit of gap on the sides of the road. These speed cushions, the width, which is 6 feet, emergency vehicles have a little wider wheelbase on the front wheels of their emergency cars, and they can actually straddle the speed cushions. Their rear wheels usually have extra tires, so they may go up on the sides, kind of the ramped up parts of the sides of the speed cushions to have some impact. But compared to speed tables, we have found the speed cushions do have less of an impact to emergency response vehicles when compared to the speed tables. So the speed cushions, again, are one that NDOT is implementing in several streets in Nashville, but just wanted to draw that comparison of the cushions and the tables, just for, again, education purposes. Um, and NDOT has done some studies on streets before traffic calming was implemented, and then studies afterwards, after maybe speed cushions were implemented. We are seeing the results we expected. We're seeing reduced vehicle speeds when speed cushions are installed on a street, and that is what the intent of the traffic calming program is for. Another toolkit we have are these radar feedback signs. They provide an electronic readout of a car's speed. Sometimes if that speed goes above the posted speed limit, I've seen it flash the speed sometimes. I believe in Nashville, they don't flash, but the number turns red if you're speeding. The intent is to let the motorist know, hey, you're doing something you shouldn't be, and it can help to catch the driver's attention, and the intent is that they'll realize they're going faster than they should and slow their speed. That's the intent of these radar feedback signs. It's just another tool in the toolkit. Another thing that we do at some, especially some intersections, are these called bulb outs. You may notice in the photo there's these white flux posts or white bollards that have been installed in the pavement. That can give the visual to the motorist of kind of a narrower area to drive in, and that can help reduce speeds when the driver sees that there's a narrower area for them to be driving. So this is a concept design that we just wanted to provide to you. Again, this is by no means a final design, but what we found is we like to kind of just give a concept design to the neighbors to kind of get some feedback. So want to walk through that. This one, Blairfield Drive, we've prepared two slides. So this is the first of two, and then there's going to be another slide, and we'll get to that second sheet. So what we're showing here again is you can kind of see that it looks purple on my screen, that purple line, that's where this project is starting. Again, right where the AZ Kelly Elementary School property line is and where your neighborhood starts. That's where the project is starting. So what we're just proposing conceptually is that on this sheet, there'd be 3 speed cushion locations. Everywhere you see a yellow trapezoid with a big C in it would be one location of those speed cushions, perhaps like the photo in the upper left corner of this slide. So everywhere you see a yellow C with a trapezoid, that would be a proposed location of one of those photos in the upper left corner. So on this slide, there'd be 3 speed cushion locations proposed, in the vicinity of Canlo Drive and Haskell Drive. I'm going to go to the next slide now, and this slide shows 6 additional speed cushion locations, 3 more through Camille Drive, leading up to the always stop at O'Hara Drive, and then 3 additional speed cushion locations between O'Hara Drive and Cane Ridge Road. So if I'm doing the math right, that'd be a total of 9 speed cushion locations. We came up with that number because we didn't actually have a number for Blairfield Drive, but what we try to do is make sure we're not designing speed cushions too close to each other, like say in a grocery store parking lot. But we also don't want them too far apart, or the motorists who unfortunately might still want to try to speed. Those longer distances might allow them to pick up more speed in between the speed cushion locations. So we look for a certain spacing between stop signs and between speed cushions. And upon our first look, that's yielded potentially 9 locations. Now, I want to say we have not done our next site visit. That's something we'll be doing in the next few weeks. We're going to take a few more measurements. We're conceptually just showing you it could be 9 speed cushion locations. After we do our field work, it could be 8 or it could be 10. That's something kind of to be determined, but generally this is sort of what a traffic calming design could look like on Blairfield Drive. And then one more thing we'd like to call your attention to, again, just part of a first glance concept design. Near the O'Hara Drive, Blairfield Drive, always stop. To me, it looks like that's the color blue. It's a circle with a B in it. That'd be one of those bulb outs that I described. Again, something like this. Pay more attention to those white vertical bollards in this photo. That's really what we would be looking to do. Just because Blairfield Drive is so wide, those white bollards could be used to sort of extend out to narrow the pavement width at that intersection. Again, just part of our traffic calming toolkit. So So again, we will have plenty of time at Q&A at the very end of our presentation. People can be typing questions or comments in the chat at any time, or if you want to wait till the very end, we'll invite people to come off and mute and provide any questions or comments. So we have like 4 or 5 more slides, but we can definitely come back to this concept design if anybody wants to talk about that. So we want to talk about the process. Again, someone in your neighborhood applied, Blairfield Drive was selected. Here we are at the neighborhood meeting. Our action item at NDOT after this meeting is to go finalize a design. This design is very zoomed out, and I'll be very honest, it doesn't provide much detail. We're going to be preparing a more detailed design where this is going to be zoomed in much more. The final design, it's going to be very clear exactly whose front yards the speed cushions are proposed in front of. We're not there yet, but that's going to be what our final design is going to show. So when you look at that kind of the middle step that says design, that's going to be our next step. And after that design, we then the design that will be voted on with an online ballot. And so we'll put the design on the NDOT website in the future, and then a ballot will be mailed out to all the property owners along Blairfield Drive to vote yes or no. I'm going to get more about the voting, which is going to be in the future here in a minute. But before that ballot, this neighborhood, the folks of you on this call will have a choice. You can go, after this meeting, we can prepare that design, put it on the website, and in the future, those ballots will be mailed out for the people to vote on. Or if the neighborhood prefers, after the design is finalized and ready, we can have a second meeting, and it can be just like this meeting here. We can, instead of walking through a concept design like this, we can walk through a more detailed final design. And so that's where you see that second neighborhood meeting if needed. That's really up to you all, if that's a desire. And then after that second meeting, then it'll go to the ballot. The difference is it might just add 1 or 2 months to the timeline if you want a second meeting, but we at NDOT truly want to adhere to what you as a neighborhood prefer. So just want to kind of go through those 2 options. So real quick, we're not voting on anything tonight. We want to hear feedback. We want to hear comments, but we're not voting. At some point in the future, once the design is finalized, if you all choose to have a second meeting, after a second meeting, we will then NDOT will send out mailer ballots, and those will go to the property owners who own property along Blairfield Drive. So if you have a front yard, side yard, backyard that touches Blairfield Drive, you will be an eligible voter if you're a property owner. And so when those ballots go out, we host a 6-week voting, and the mailer ballots will have a website. You'll be able to go to a website, you'll be able to review the design, and you'll be able to vote, yes, I want this traffic calming design to be built, or you can vote, no, I do not want this traffic calming design to be built. And at the end of the 6-week voting, we'll close the voting. We at NDOT will tally the votes. And if 66% of the people that voted vote yes, then the traffic calming design will be built. However, if that 66% threshold is not met by those who voted, then it will not be built. And we will follow up with the neighborhood applicant and the council member on possibly an alternative design that maybe doesn't involve something like speed cushions. So that is the step. Again, we can come back to this during the Q&A. Again, not balloting today, but that will be a future step. It'll be the voting will happen once the final design is prepared. So this is just an example of what that ballot zone looks like. Again, it's residential property owners along Blairfield Drive. HOA common areas are excluded. So there are some properties that technically are adjacent that you see are not highlighted. Those are the common areas. We don't give common areas a vote, but that's sort of a visual of what that looks like there. And so again, my name is Brad Walshmit. Really appreciate you bearing with us and allowing us to kind of present that presentation. Before I ask people to come off of mute, I'm going to ask my colleague Lan if you would come off of mute, and if you could let me know if there's been any comments or questions in the chat. Lan?
Yes, we have a couple questions in the chat. The first one from James York. He asked, can the speed bumps at the school be changed to cushions?
Excellent. So we are not looking at that part of Blairfield Drive. But let me and our team follow up with NDOT because I appreciate you bringing that up. I don't know if we will be able to or not, but at minimum, we're going to take a note of that from this meeting and we'll follow up with NDOT and we'll see. But that could also be a Hub Nashville request. The reason I say that is we are looking at the Blairfield Drive portion from the school property line at Kelly and your neighborhood to Cane Ridge. So we're really not looking at that western portion. So we are happy to ask NDOT about that. This traffic calming project will probably not consider that, but you could also maybe do a Hub Nashville process for that. So we could kind of go both.
And the next question from Dan McGill, he said, people park on the street. How does that affect speed cushions?
I'm not sure they really affect them. In some places we may have speed cushions, and I suppose cars may occasionally park with one set of wheels up on the speed cushion, or they may park with the front wheels on one side of the cushion and the rear wheels on the other side. We have implemented speed cushions in many streets in Nashville where on-street parking is occurring, and I have not heard, or our team has not heard, really any complaints or concerns about that. So I guess we acknowledge the on-street parking happens, but the speed cushions will not be, I guess, considered like a no parking area.
Okay. The Bill B asked, he said we can't hear land. Can you hear me okay, Brad?
I'm able to hear you, Lan. I'm not sure about the neighbors though.
I'll try to speak a little louder.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hear you good.
Okay, sweet. Thank you guys. Okay. Bill asked, how long do these devices last since they're made of rubber? And do they
Yes.
come with
Yes, so they are made of a modular rubber, so it's a pretty well fabricated product by a vendor that NDOT uses. I honestly cannot remember the warranty period. It's multiple years. But what I will say is that if the traffic calming design is voted successfully in the future by the property owners along Blairfield Drive and these speed cushions get installed, um, anything that's not working the way it should, that would become a Hub Nashville request. Whether we haven't seen a lot of examples of like pieces breaking off, so I'm not really we're not too concerned. But I suppose if that started happening, or if bolts, again, we haven't seen many examples of bolts loosening on them. But if any of those things happened, these speed cushions would become a maintenance item for NDOT, since Blairfield drives a public street. So that could become a Hub Nashville request if the vote is successful and if they get built.
Okay, and then David Armstrong asked, glad to see the initiative. What led up to it?
Yes, so what led up to it is a citizen is able to apply for streets. NDOT opens that application window up twice a year. And so someone from your neighborhood would have applied for traffic calming along Blairfield Drive between the A.Z. Kelly Elementary School line and Cane Ridge Road, along with 500 other streets or so. And upon the data collection, Blairfield Drive was one of 85 streets chosen back in August. So I don't have the name of who applied, but it would have been someone from your neighborhood. That's what initiates everything.
Okay, and the next question from Bill again. He asked, do you find people that speed, which are many, will slow down, but does the cushion cause the car leaving the cushion, floor it, and thus cause a lot of noise?
I'm gonna try to answer the question the best I can, but I may ask for some feedback if I don't get it quite right. So we are looking to, slow vehicles along Blairfield Drive with the design. So inherently, it may be that cars slow down a little bit approaching the speed cushion, and inherently those vehicles may then want to accelerate once they get past the speed cushion, before they get to the next speed cushion. Now, hopefully they don't floor it, but we don't know. But that speeding may happen. So, if the question is about the noise from vehicles accelerating from the speed cushions, then yes, that may be possible. Because there will be more I call accelerations off of the speed cushions but the thought is that there should also be more slowing down approaching each speed cushion. So that's the best answer. And if I got it wrong, please let me know. But that was my best attempt to answer that one.
No, that was what I was asking, Brad.
Okay. Okay. Excellent.
David McLean wanted to confirm that for voting, we don't need 66% of the community to vote yes. We need 66 of the people who actually vote.
Confirmed. And the example that we like to give is I don't know off the top of my head how many residential property owners there are directly adjacent to Blairfield Drive, but let's just say it's 100. If there's 100 eligible voters and the mailer ballots go out to those 100, and then they're in the 6 weeks, only 10 vote. But if 7 of those 10 vote yes, that would be 70% of the ones that voted yes. That would be considered successful. So yeah, it is 66% or 2/3 of those that vote. A non-vote or an indifference doesn't help or hurt the vote tallying.
Yeah, thanks for answering that, Brad. I appreciate it.
Happy to, yep.
And Brandon asked, what was the difference between the cushion and the tables?
Yes, so I'm going to go back. Thank you for asking that. So the speed cushions have these gaps in between them, so it's less material. It also provides the gaps because emergency vehicles have a wider wheelbase and wider axle, so the front tires can actually straddle the speed cushions. With all the weight in the back of those emergency vehicles, usually they have extra tires. Those tires may go up on the sides of the ramped up parts of the speed cushions, but in general, emergency vehicles are impacted less by speed cushions compared to speed tables, where there are no gaps. The speed table extends across the entire width of the street. It's a lot more material and more cost for these. And then, of course, the front wheels of an emergency vehicle can't straddle them, so they're just going to be slowed down a little more compared to speed cushions. So those are the main differences between the speed cushions and the speed tables.
Who makes the determination of which one you would get?
NDOT and our engineering design team would make that determination. Happy to hear feedback from you all, but typically we're going to be designing and proposing speed cushions because it is less material and because it does have a little bit of a reduced impact to the emergency vehicles.
In response to that, Dan asked, can cars straddle the speed cushions?
So most passenger vehicles cannot. I have not done a measurement of every single make and model of car. I know that's not the question. My vehicle cannot straddle these at best. I'm either going both of my tires sort of on the edges of a cushion, or I might do one set of tires kind of going over the middle of the speed cushion, and maybe my other tire set is going on one of the gaps. I'm not able to straddle speed cushions in my personal vehicle. There might be some large size vehicles that can. I'm not sure which all of them are, but I know emergency vehicles can, at least the front parts, because they have a wider wheelbase and they do not have extra tires in the front. But there might be some other vehicles out there that maybe they could straddle. I'm not sure.
Yeah, James York said F-150 cannot straddle. So I imagine most can't.
Hey, how you doing? This is Lamar. Hey, can we go back to the slide that shows that it's 9 speed cushion that we're looking to put along Blairfield Drive?
Sure. So yeah, there's this slide and here's 3, and then here's the one with 6 on it. So 3
Yeah.
plus 6 would be 9. Yep.
Right. So I'm looking from left to right, which is the first speed cushion. I'm trying to see is that's right as you get down, look like by the first house that's not part of the school property.
There you go. Hopefully I'm sharing the screen you're talking about now.
Okay. All right. So, but go back to the other one. So I'm trying to take a look at it and see. So if that's from left to right, that's only 3 from the school line all the way up to uh, O'Hara where the little park at.
So, can you see AZ Kelly Elementary School label?
This one, yes.
Okay, so we got 3 cushions here going through Cantaloupe Drive and Haskell Drive, but then you'll see on the far right, it's like see next sheet. And so if we go to the next sheet, here's 3 more. Here's 3 more in addition
Oh,
that kind of
before
go
you
through
get
like the, go ahead.
the 3 addition before you get to the stop sign on O'Hara.
Correct.
Okay, all right, because I thought it was just only 3. I was gonna say that is definitely not enough. But okay, understand.
Yes. Yeah, sorry for splitting up the sheets. We wanted to kind of zoom in a little more, and that meant we had 2 slides. So sorry for the confusion that's causing.
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
Going back to the questions in the chat, what was your criteria of determining where the speed cushions are placed?
Yes, thank you for asking that. So, in general, we usually start with a spacing of roughly 350 feet to 450 feet. So, roughly 400 feet, but we have some that'll be less and some that'll be more. So, we start at again the beginning of the project, which is right there at the elementary school line and where your neighborhood starts, and then we also consider that we don't need to have speed cushions, 5 feet from an all-way stop at O'Hara Drive. And then also we know there's the stop sign at Cane Ridge Road. So we kind of look at that distance of Blairfield Drive, knowing we're generally trying to look for a spacing between stop sign and cushion, and between the cushions of, on average, 350 to 450 feet. There may be some that are closer to that lower range, or maybe some that get closer to that higher range. But that's generally how we come up with the number, which is based on the spacing. And in this case, we've conceptually come up with 9 locations.
Okay, another question. Is there a better or more comfortable option than the rubber cushion? I've noticed that in certain places it can be quite uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a very good question. We have found the vertical measures, such as speed cushions, are one of the more effective ways to reduce vehicle speeds. Definitely respect and understand people's opinions. Some people do like them, and some people may not like them. But we have found they are generally pretty effective. I will add one thing. I'm going to go back to the speed cushions slide here, so bear with me, please. One thing I want to touch on is at the very bottom. I didn't mention this earlier, but there's lengths. Those lengths can vary. For a while, many of the NDOT speed cushions we were proposing were 7 feet. So as a car's going over it, it's going over 7 feet length of speed cushions. We've been looking at doing some little longer, maybe 10.5 foot, even long speed cushions. If you look at the photo in the bottom left corner of the slide, it may be difficult to see, but hopefully you can see there's sort of like an additional middle piece there. So regarding the bumpiness, the speed cushions will be bumpy in some way. They are something over the road that cars are driving over, but we are looking at modifying how long they are to still reduce vehicle speeds, but maybe not make them as abrupt as other locations. So I don't know if that's helpful, but want to kind of elaborate on that given the question.
Okay, and Dan asked, do you have authority to stop parking at speed cushion locations on the street? Label as no parking?
Yeah, so me, Brad Waldschmidt, no, I do not have the authority to do so. The traffic calming design itself also does not have the authority to start prohibiting any on-street parking. Based on my knowledge, the only way to begin prohibiting on-street parking on a street would be to go through Hub Nashville or perhaps your council member, and that may require a traffic and parking commission process to reduce or to prohibit parking along a street. So we can't, as part of the traffic calming program team at NDOT, and the traffic calming design would not prohibit parking either. So hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, we're not looking to do anything that's going to restrict or remove anybody's on-street parking.
Hey, Brad.
Hello.
Hey, Brad. I was noticing in your photos, you have these signs that refer to the cushions. But then you also have bollards there. Would those be installed also?
Yes. I'm sorry. I did not mean to say yes. Yes, I understand your question is what I meant to say. So the white bollards would probably not be installed. We NDOT was trying those out at a few locations, and when it's just one right there, I believe NDOT was seeing a lot of knockdowns and there was a lot of maintenance activities, and it really just becomes a lot of Hub Nashville requests to go replace white bollards. So I don't think we'd be looking at the um the white flexible bollards just at speed cushions. Again, for maybe some of those bulb outs at intersections, perhaps, but probably not accompanying a speed cushion.
But there would be signs like that one in the upper
There,
left corner.
yes, there would be signs. Sometimes we do put them at each and every speed cushion location, or sometimes if there's two or three in a row. For instance, I'm just going to go to back to the concept design to address your question. So if you look at the section between O'Hara Drive and Cane Ridge Road, there's based on this concept design, there'd be three locations of speed cushions, and there's no intersecting streets between O'Hara and Cane Ridge. So we may put one sign at the first one going in each direction, but not do signs at each and every one in both directions in that instance. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, okay. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be at every single cushion.
Correct. It wouldn't
Okay.
have to be. We really just want to
Yeah.
make sure that anybody who turns into Blairfield knows their speed
Oh,
cushions
okay. Cool.
coming up.
Thank you.
And one thing that I realized we did not cover is the idea of white pavement markings. And I want to talk about those real quick because I realized we didn't cover those in the presentation, but I would be curious to hear people's feedback. Sometimes we do a traffic calming toolkit item known as narrowing, which can be taking a street which doesn't really have any pavement markings and adding the white lines, one on each side. And what it does is even though we're not narrowing pavement, the pavement doesn't change. By adding those white lines that kind of define where the cars are supposed to be, it can actually have a mental effect on the motorist to maybe drive a little slower because they do perceive that there's a narrower area instead of this very, very large width of pavement. There is a possibility for narrowing out just with the white lines. We've seen some success with that. We've seen some success when that's paired with speed cushions. So I do, that's not shown in the concept design. We didn't, but talking about in the questions here, I just want to throw that out as an idea and see if there'd be any interest in possibly having white edge lines that kind of go and define where the vehicles are supposed to be driving along your street.
I'm not sure that works because of all the street parking that we have here. Unless you bring those white lines far enough off the curb to get past the cars, nobody's going to see them.
Okay.
And I just came down here right 5 minutes before this meeting, and Blairfield Drive is probably 3/4 covered with parking on the side of the street right now, as we speak.
So let me just ask a hypothetical, just so we as the engineers can sort of know if it was possible to add the white edge line narrowing, those pavement markings along Blairfield, and it was done in such a way in that generally, if cars are parking the way they should, rightmost tires near the curb, the cars would still be on the other side of that white line. Is that something that the neighborhood would be interested in NDOT exploring and considering?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that'd be a good idea because of the fact, like you said, the line should be wide enough that the cars should be parked within that line. So it kind of narrows the road a little bit anyway. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
But is Blairfield wide enough to come off the curb far enough to get the line on the, let's say, the left-hand side of the car away from the curve and still not impede the 2 lanes of traffic?
Right. And that's the exact question that we would look a little more into. And that's one of the reasons why we're just showing you a concept design. We will do some more measurements in the next few weeks. I will tell you, initially, I think we may be able to, given how wide Blairfield Drive is. But please, I'm saying that on a recorded meeting here, but please don't hold me to that. Just I think initially it might do it, but we want to go out and do some measurements and make sure.
I'm not opposed to the white lines, but I don't think that the Camaros and the Dodge Chargers are even going to care about that.
You have the same people driving by your house that I do.
Yeah, like I said, the cars are parked there anyway, so that's a marker right there. So just the lines going on the outside of those cars, I think is wide enough also. But it don't hurt anything.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about Blairfield from the stop sign to Cane Ridge Road? That's a very flat, semi-flat area. And there's a lot of speeding that happens between that stop sign and Cane Ridge Road. 3, do you think 3 is enough, or would you consider 4 in that area?
That's something, thank you for your question. And that's something that kind of thing we'd be looking at, with our additional measurements and kind of just going and checking it out. The answer is like maybe, but the answer is also that maybe we've struck the right balance. Because again, we do try to find roughly that 400 feet of spacing in between, and we can go and make sure. But I believe basically that and we might move some of them around. I mean, I see, for instance, maybe the cushion that's closest to the O'Hara Drive always stop. Maybe that'll get pushed a little bit to the right to kind of shorten that distance between. So there's some things that we will be doing with the more detailed design and with our measurements. But in general, my initial thought is I do feel like 3 locations is probably the right solution on that section, but maybe the exact locations shown in this concept aren't perfect. And that's what we'll be taking a further look at with more detail.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So
Brad, sorry, we have some more questions in the chat.
Yes.
Let's see. Is it possible to consider adding other street enhancements to this project, such as street lighting? The neighborhood is quite dim. It would greatly improve safety and visibility.
Yes, I generally agree that street lighting does help improve visibility and safety. I do agree with that point. Traffic calming program will not do anything with street lighting, but that is an excellent request either for your council member or Hub Nashville. But traffic calming program will not do anything with the lighting.
Hey, how you doing? This is Lamar again. Hey, we kind of spoke on that in our part of HOA, and one of the things they plan on doing is improving the lighting as far as not more lights on poles, but for the lighting itself, going to more of a I'm gonna say HDMI, LED type lights, so it helped with the lighting. But according to when we talked about it, as lights bulbs go out, they'll replace them with the new ones during that time frame. They're not gonna come out and just replace them.
And just to make sure, Lamar, just so everyone on the call knows, and so I know, when you say they replace them, is that more Metro Nashville or is that Nashville Electric Service?
Nashville Electric Service.
Okay. So then perhaps that would not be a Hub Nashville request because that's more for NDOT and Metro Nashville, and I don't think NES is part of that. I could be wrong, but okay. No, thank you for that info, Lamar, for the group.
David,
I've logged Hub Nashville requests before for streetlights, and whether they're passed on to NES or not, I'm not sure how they get done, but it does work if you log requests.
Okay.
Awesome. Charles Weir said, will the number of accidents caused by speeding within a particular section of Blairfield be taken into consideration with placement? I'm assuming the placement of the cushions.
So the answer is no, we are not looking at crash history when it comes to what we feel like is a sound engineering design for traffic calming. We're focused more on the street conditions and spacing and a tool like speed cushions that we've seen be successful in reducing vehicle speeds to reduce speeding along the entire length of the street segments, not just necessarily in one particular location. So I would say for the design part, we're not looking at crash history. We're looking more at like the traffic calming design principles that we have seen work and be successful.
Okay, and Jess White asked, of the neighborhoods selected for traffic calming over the past 3 years or so, do you have an idea of what percentage of proposed concepts wind up being voted as approved during the voting period?
Yes, so thank you for that question. I'm going to really quickly. So Lan, I want to ask, are you able to see me going to the NDOT website for traffic calming?
Yes.
Excellent. So the very top, I usually just search in my web browser Nashville traffic calming, and there is a lot of information on this page, lots. And view ballot results is one of the options. You can actually view the ballot results from any street that's ever been in the traffic calming program. I think the question was in the past 3 years. It's all here. You're able to see when the ballot opened, when it closed, what percent of those that voted were in favor, and whether it was a pass or fail. There's a few fails, but many of these are pass results. Again, a few fails here and there, that does happen, but a vast majority of the streets do receive a pass. I don't have the exact number, but I just kind of wanted to demonstrate that, A, to make sure people know about the traffic calming website on NDOT's webpage if there's interest, but also hopefully that answered the question that we do see a lot of passes, and there are some fails, that happens, but we do see a lot of passes, the vast majority.
Thank you so much. That's super helpful information, and I appreciate that it's out there for the world to see on the website.
Yeah, happy to help. And so one of the things that we want to make sure we get from this meeting, I'm going to go back to the flow chart here, is we at NDOT are definitely going to be preparing a final design, again, more zoomed in, more details. Ultimately, that design will be posted onto the NDOT website. That'll be accessible when property owners along Blairfield Drive have the opportunity to vote. We're going to do some more field measurements as part of that final design. We're even going to look at things like that white line narrowing idea that we kind of talked about, whether that makes sense or not. The neighborhood, and kind of want to hear from the people on this call here. There's two options. One is we may not meet again. We would just simply prepare that design, and we would then, once the design's ready, put it on the website and send the mailer ballots out to the property owners on Blairfield Drive. Another option is once that final design is ready, we'll reach out to the lead neighborhood applicant and we'll schedule a second meeting that could be very similar to this one, but instead we're going to go over the more detailed design that's zoomed in more, and then also go over the online ballot and voting procedure again. Different streets have different. I think I've had 6 or 8 meetings in the past couple months, and some want the second meeting, some don't. So it truly is up to you. Would love to hear some feedback on how people think about that.
Well, I think a second meeting would be good, because if the questions about final design, it won't be no way to get it answered if don't have a second meeting, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with Lamar on that.
Okay. Well, great. Well, then that's settled then. We'll prepare that final design, and then once the design's ready, our next step will be to reach out to the lead applicant and work with and have a second meeting scheduled that could be very similar to this one. Again, that detailed design will be walked through. We would go over what that ballot process is like again. Happy to do that. We'll mark that that's Blairfield Drive's preference, and we'll make it happen in the future.
And someone asked, is it possible to send them the link to the final design when the design is ready?
So the final design will not be posted on the website at the time of our second meeting. We like to have, when neighborhoods do want a second meeting, we like for that to be the time where the design's being talked about and walked through. But at the time that the ballots go out and the online voting opens up, at that point, the design will be on the NDOT website at that point. Really appreciate the questions and comments. This is wonderful, and we're here as long as the group wants to, keep talking. What are some other questions or comments that people might have?
There's one that just popped up in the chat. If it passes, will it be completed by year end? Do you mean end of the year?
Yeah, so I will say that it's possible, but NDOT has been seeing a roughly an 8-month lead time to get speed cushions installed. Part of that is because the traffic calming program has been selecting many streets, and as we kind of talked through just a few minutes ago, many streets have been voting yes. And so what that's created a very large backlog on the contractors that NDOT uses to install the speed cushions. So, we may have our second meeting sometime in April, if I had to guess, and the ballots may not, so the voting may not close until, you know, sometime after that June in the or so, because if we have our second meeting in April, that means the voting wouldn't start until late April, early May. Add 6 weeks, we're looking at maybe June sometime before we even know if the votes were successful or not. So 6 to 8 months after that would give us to December, so maybe, but also could get us into February of next year. I will say NDOT is looking at finding more ways to, I guess, accelerate the pace at which contractors are able to install the speed cushions. So looking at making that time less, but it would be close at the end of 2024, but it may slip into early 2025, just because of how many speed cushions are getting, I guess, yes votes across Metro Nashville.
Hey, Brad, Bill here again.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone's really interested in this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So when they're installed, there's no digging involved, right? It's just a matter of like steel rods or something pushed into the pavement, or how are they installed? I'm just curious how they're installed.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So there should not be any digging. I don't know when they install the signposts if there's any digging. I don't think there is. They usually just kind of like slam the signpost into the earth. So as far as the speed cushions, though, that is one of the benefits of the modular rubber devices is they are prefabricated. It may be hard to see from some of these photos, but there are many, many small holes in these rubberized pieces, and they're bolted in to the asphalt. And that's basically how they get installed. So I don't anticipate there would be any digging.
Yeah, okay, so they're just bolted in. Okay, gotcha.
Any suggestion on how to go about increased enforcement of speed limit?
Yes, so going back to the 3 E's, we at NDOT, we have the engineering part covered for y'all, but enforcement is a part of the traffic calming. It's not something that NDOT has jurisdiction over. So I do not have any suggestions for how to get that done because we are so at NDOT focused on the engineering part, the part we can control in our department on the traffic calming team. I do not have, unfortunately, any suggestions on the enforcement part, but we are here for the education and definitely the engineering.
That would be Metro Police. I had a conversation with them one day. They were out here for something else, and I brought that up because they're speeding through here constantly. And they said that I should approach my councilman and let them address that issue with Metro.
Okay. No, thanks for sharing that perspective and that info.
Yeah. That was maybe 18 months ago. So it's been a little while, but that's what the Metro officer told me was approach your councilman.
Great. Well, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a question, but it's really outside of our neighborhood. But I think it's traffic calming, so I don't know if that's something you want to answer tonight or not appropriate.
Look, well, Lamar, we're here for you. As long as you ask it appropriately, we'll answer it, man.
All right, so I got a question on a yield sign on Pettis Road that connects to, I think that's Old Hickory Boulevard. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what I'm talking about. it just, the yield sign seems kind of awkward where it's at, because if you're traveling from Old Hickory to Pettis, that's where the yield sign, that's where the people are supposed to yield. But as you coming off the curve of Old Hickory, they tend to have to yield anyway, because you don't know where the other cars are coming from the opposite direction. You don't know if they're gonna keep straight, which is make them yield, or go around the curve. So you yielding anyway. So that yield sign, I'm surprised there's not a lot more wrecks right there. But that yield sign, where is that? Nobody literally doesn't stop. I seen a police officer go straight through it. They didn't even yield. So I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about, where it's located at.
You know, I do not drive. I drove through that intersection maybe 2 or 3 times a year, so Lamar. So I'm definitely not familiar with it as you are. And from memory, I can't recall, but that's just because I don't drive through it frequently. I do think the traffic calming program would not be the spot for that, but I think what you're describing is a very good example of the Hub Nashville. By any chance, have you commented on that or made a remark about that in the Hub Nashville?
No, I haven't, but I will. I would just.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
on Mars, there's actually, and I know KM said this in the chat as well, but they're in the process of planning to put a roundabout there. So that's been kind of on the docket in Cane Ridge Rural for a number of months now. They're working on trying to figure out what they're going to do there, but they are aware that it's a problem and they're going to be rectifying it, because everyone talks about how it used to be a cow path and now it's busy traffic area, especially during rush hour. So
Okay, that's appreciated. I'm glad you actually brought that up. I didn't know that.
no worries.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Anything else from the group?
Thank you
Okay,
for
well,
meeting with us all.
well, thank you for taking the time out of your evening to meet and talk with us. We really appreciate it. So our action item at NDOT is to go do those field measurements, and then we're going to be revising and preparing a final design that's more detailed. Once that's ready, then we will follow up with the lead applicant to have a second meeting scheduled. And at that point, we'll go over the final design in greater detail and also go over the ballot process again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, we
Excellent.
have
Thank you
one
all.
more question in the
Oh,
chat.
okay, Lance. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Sorry, I think it just popped up. So, did the repercussions cause any inconveniences during the snow? Last week was incredibly tough and full of challenges because of the heavy snowfall.
Yes, that is a good question. I don't know the answer, but we do, a few of us on the NDOT traffic calming team have an internal discussion tomorrow to talk about traffic calming topics. And I believe that will be one of the topics to check in with how the NDOT, snowplow and salt trucks and whatnot dealt with those. So I do not have an answer now, but it is on the agenda to discuss tomorrow to hear how other streets, how that worked. So I'm hoping maybe at the second meeting we'll have better information. Just it's one day, today's one day before we have that discussion.
Right.
Okay.
That was a good question.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.